A package today can cross continents in just days. But 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire built a communication network so advanced, it challenges our modern expectations. We are conducting a unique historical experiment, putting the legendary Cursus Publicus to the ultimate speed test. By the end, you will know exactly how fast an imperial courier could deliver a vital message from Rome to the distant edge of the known world. We will uncover the secrets of their relay stations, face down alpine blizzards, and brave the treacherous English Channel to solve this ancient mystery. What does it take to hold an empire together with little more than a horse, a road, and sheer human will? This vast network was the lifeblood of the empire, a state-run express service known as the Cursus Publicus. Think of it not as a simple postal service for personal letters, but as the ancient world's most sophisticated information superhighway. Its primary cargo was the empire's pulse, the vital commands and intelligence that held distant provinces in check. Emperor Augustus, the first emperor, formalized this system around 20 years before the Common Era, transforming it from an ad hoc arrangement into a meticulously organized government department. His goal was control, to ensure his word could travel faster than any rebellion. The genius of the system lay in its infrastructure, a chain of way stations meticulously placed along every major Roman road. The smaller relay posts, called mutations, appeared every 6 to 8 miles. Here, a courier on a lathered horse could swap his exhausted animal for a fresh one in a matter of minutes, never breaking his pace. Then, after every 3 or 4 of these quick changes, he would reach a larger, more comprehensive rest house called a mansio. These were full-service stations offering food, lodging, and medical care for the courier himself, allowing a man to recover his strength while his message raced onward with a fresh relay rider. This endless chain of stations, manned and supplied at state expense, stretched across 250,000 miles of paved Roman roads, binding the empire from the deserts of Syria to the rain-swept highlands of Britain. But the true power of the Cursus Publicus did not lie in its stone and timber. It lived in the men who ran it. These were not ordinary postmen, they were the empire's elite athletes of information, pushed to their absolute physical limits. 2 main types of courier formed the backbone of this system. The cursors were the runners, covering shorter distances on foot with a raw, relentless endurance we can scarcely comprehend today. Then, there were the veredarii, the mounted riders who formed the express service, galloping across vast provinces. These men were often soldiers or imperial slaves, chosen for their loyalty, strength, and sheer toughness. Their training was brutal, a constant regime of running and riding designed to forge bodies capable of withstanding the punishing schedule. They faced relentless dangers, from bands of highwaymen lurking in wooded passes to sudden, violent storms that could sweep a rider from his saddle. To survive, they carried more than just a message pouch. Their most vital possession was a small, official warrant called a diploma. This was their key to the entire empire, a bronze or wax tablet that bore the imperial seal. Presenting this diploma at any mansio or mutatio gave them the absolute authority to demand a fresh horse, a meal, or a bed, no questions asked. Without it, they were just another traveler on a long, lonely road. These couriers, however, would have been utterly powerless without the stage on which they performed. Their legendary speed was built not on horseback, but on stone. The true foundation of the entire system was the Roman road network, an engineering achievement so profound it would not be rivaled in Europe for over 1,000 years. These were not mere dirt paths trodden by time. They were meticulously constructed monuments to Roman ambition, designed for one primary purpose: to move people and information with breathtaking efficiency. The secret to their endurance and speed lay in their complex, layered construction. Engineers would first dig a deep trench, then pack it with a foundation of large stones. On top of this, they laid successive layers of smaller stones, gravel, and sand, all bound together with lime mortar. The final surface was often large, tightly fitted stone slabs, cambered so that rainwater would drain into the gutters running along each side. The result was a road that was straight, well-drained, and incredibly durable. capable of withstanding heavy traffic and harsh weather for centuries. For our speed test from Rome to the edge of the world, two of these highways would be absolutely critical. The Via Appia, snaking up the western coast of Italy, would be the first leg of the journey, a ribbon of stone carrying our messenger north. Then, perhaps even more vital, was the Via Appia, the legendary land bridge into Gaul, built directly over the ancient route used by Hannibal and his elephant. These roads were the ancient equivalent of modern interstate highways, allowing a courier to maintain a consistent, punishing pace day and night, in conditions that would have turned any other path into a muddy, impassable quagmire. Our experiment demands a route worthy of the empire's finest courier. We begin in the very heart of the world, the Forum of Rome itself. From those storied cobblestones, our rider will carry his vital message north, following the Via Appia along the sun-baked Italian coast. His first great barrier will be the Alps, a wall of rock and ice that separates the civilized peninsula from the wilds of Gaul. Conquering a high pass, he descends into what is now southern France, joining the ancient Via Appia. For days, he will race across the rolling plains of Gaul, a land of forests and new Roman towns, pushing ever northward. The journey does not end on the continent. His final, most daunting challenge is the unpredictable English Channel, a tempestuous stretch of water he must cross by imperial galley to reach the shores of Britannia. His ultimate destination is the bustling provincial capital of Londinium, a thriving port on the River Thames. From the center of power to the edge of the known world, this is a trek of over 1,200 Roman miles. This is not a simple stroll, it is an epic test of endurance against geography itself. So how many days would such a brutal journey actually take? The answer lies in the relentless, calculated pace of the imperial machine. So what did fast truly mean in a world without engines or instant communication? For the average Roman merchant hauling goods in a lumbering ox cart, covering 15 miles in a day was considered good time. A civilian on foot with a heavy pack might manage 20. Their speed was dictated by the brutal, unyielding limits of human and animal endurance, but the imperial courier existed in an entirely different realm of velocity. We have a remarkable window into their world through the work of a Roman geographer named Isidore of Charax. Writing around the time of Emperor Augustus, he documented the stations and distances along eastern trade routes, but his records give us a crucial baseline. Later sources, including imperial edicts, push the numbers into the extraordinary. They suggest that a veredarii, a mounted courier on official business, was expected to cover between 50 and 80 Roman miles in a single day. To put that in modern terms, that is roughly 46 to 74 modern miles. Imagine the sheer physical toll of such a feat. This was not a leisurely ride through the countryside. This was a brutal, day-long gallop, a cycle of clinging to a saddle, swapping horses at dusty way stations, and pushing onward through fatigue and discomfort. This staggering daily distance was the empire's benchmark for urgency, the standard against which we must measure our own virtual journey from Rome to Londinium. This relentless pace depended entirely on a perfectly timed sequence of stops. Picture a rider guiding his sweat-lathered horse off the smooth stone of the Via Appia, the animal's breath coming in ragged puffs as they approach a low, functional building. This is a mutatio, the smallest and most critical link in the imperial chain. Its entire purpose was speed, a machine built for a single, repetitive task. The compound was a hub of controlled chaos, centered around a large, open courtyard flanked by long, roof stables. Inside those stables stood a rotation of fresh horses, each one a carefully selected breed known for its stamina and steady temperament. These were not the fiery warhorses of a general's parade, but the durable, reliable engines of the empire's communication. A team of grooms and a dedicated veterinarian were constantly on duty, their lives dedicated to the health and readiness of these vital animals. Their work ensured that at any moment, day or night, a fresh mount was prepared to run. The changeover itself was a masterpiece of efficiency. As the incoming courier slid from his saddle, a groom would immediately take the reins of his exhausted horse, leading it away for water, food, and a well-deserved rest. Simultaneously, Another groom would emerge from the stable leading a fresh, saddled horse. The courier himself barely had time to take a single drink of water or deliver a terse update to the station master before swinging onto the new animal. The entire exchange, from arrival to departure, was designed to take less than 5 minutes. In that brief window, the message was renewed, its speed restored, its momentum unbroken. This was the secret heartbeat of the entire system, the reason a courier could cover 80 miles in a day without killing his horse. Every 6 to 8 miles, another mutatio waited, its stables holding the next burst of speed, ready to launch the rider and his vital cargo ever closer to the distant shores of Britannia. Yet even the fastest horse has its limits when carrying more than a single man and a message. For the heaviest imperial cargo, the Cursus Publicus rolled out a different kind of vehicle, the Retta. This is not a nimble courier's mount, but a sturdy, four-wheeled covered carriage. Think of it as the freight truck of the ancient world, used to transport groups of government officials, their luggage or bulk shipments of official documents and coin. Its enclosed body offered protection from the elements and from prying eyes, but this comfort came at a steep cost in speed. A Retta, pulled by a team of oxen or mules, would have been lucky to cover 20 miles in a day, its progress slowed by its sheer weight and the plodding pace of its draft animals. For less bulky shipments, there was the Veredarii, a lighter, two-wheeled cart. It was faster than the Retta, but still no match for a lone rider. The choice of vehicle was a deliberate calculation, a trade-off between urgency and capacity. A governor's tax revenue would travel by Retta, its slow, secure journey a matter of accounting, but a report of a barbarian raid or a plot against the emperor. That demanded the fastest option available. Our virtual speed test strips away all that weight and bureaucracy to focus on the system's purest expression of speed, the solitary veredarii on his relay of horses. He carries nothing but a sealed dispatch and the absolute authority of Rome, his mission defined by a single, relentless command, faster. The first light of dawn touches the gilded rooftops of the Forum, but our courier feels no warmth. His world has narrowed to a single, sealed dispatch, pressed into his hand by a magistrate whose grim expression says more than the wax tablet ever could. He is a veredarii, and his body is a tool hardened for this moment. His fingers check the leather pouch at his belt, ensuring the vital diploma is secure. He tests the girth of his saddle, a familiar ritual of straps and buckles. The horse, a fine-bred stallion provided by the state, stamps a hoof on the worn cobblestones, sensing the urgency. With a final, curt nod from the official, he is gone. The clatter of hooves echoes through the still sleeping city as he guides his mount through the narrow streets, past the grand temples and bustling markets beginning to stir. His path leads north to the city gate and the beginning of the Via Appia. This road will be his companion for days, a straight stone arrow shot toward the distant, snow-capped barrier of the Alps. The city falls away behind him, its noise fading into the rhythm of the gallop. The message is moving, the clock is now running on our great experiment, and every pounding hoofbeat carries it farther from the heart of Rome and closer to the edge of the world. The familiar stone of the Via Appia hums beneath his horse's hooves, a steady drumbeat of progress. This first leg through Italy is the easiest stretch he will know, a sprint across the empire's civilized heartland. The road unwinds before him, a pale ribbon cutting through the lush green of the Tiber Valley, its surface impeccably maintained. He does not slow for the bustling towns that dot his path. Florentia appears in the distance, a cluster of red-tiled roofs on the Arno, and is gone in a blur. Later, the larger settlement of Bononia, a key crossroads, flashes by as he bypasses its main thoroughfares, staying true to the military road. His world becomes a cycle of gallop and change. Every 6 miles, another mutatio materializes, its grooms already waiting with a fresh horse. The exchange is a wordless ballet of practiced efficiency, sweat and dust, and the brief, comforting smell of hay and leather before he is airborne again. On these well-traveled roads, the stations are plentiful, and the horses are of the finest stock. He pushes his body and his string of mounts hard, capitalizing on the optimal conditions. By the time the sun begins to dip below the western hills, casting long shadows across the Po Valley, he has covered a staggering 75 miles. This is not just a strong start, it is a statement of intent. The Empire's machine is operating at peak efficiency, devouring distance with a relentless, mechanical hunger. But this is the easy part. Ahead, the horizon is no longer defined by gentle hills and vineyards, but by a jagged purple line that seems to hold up the sky. The Alps are waiting, and they do not care for the speed of empires. The purple line on the horizon hardens into a wall of jagged rock and eternal snow. The Alps are no longer a distant threat, but an immediate, brutal reality. The Couriers' breakneck pace along the flat Roman roads is about to come to a grinding halt. Here, the Empire's engineering marvel meets its ultimate test. Our rider is likely aiming for one of the great passes, perhaps the Mont Cenis or the Great St. Bernard Pass, both vital arteries punched through the mountain barrier by Roman determination. The smooth, straight Via Appia is a memory. Now the path narrows into a treacherous track, often little more than a ledge carved into the side of a cliff. The air grows thin and biting cold, even in summer. One misstep from his horse, one loose stone on the steep, winding descent, and the message from Rome would be lost forever in a deep ravine. This leg of the journey is a brutal battle against geography itself. Progress is no longer measured in relentless miles, but in painful, hard-won vertical feet. The courier dismounts frequently, now more a mountain guide than a galloping messenger, leading his nervous horse on foot across unstable scree slopes and over ancient, melting snow patches. His lungs burn in the thin air, and his muscles ache with a new, grinding fatigue. And then there is the weather. In these high altitudes, conditions can turn in an instant. A bright, sunny morning can become a blinding whiteout by noon, with howling winds and driving snow that erase the path completely. On days like that, even the most determined courier and the most vital message are utterly stopped, forced to take shelter in a rudimentary mountain mansio and wait, losing precious hours or even days while the Empire holds its breath. This is where the speed test faces its first true crisis, where human will confronts the indifferent power of the mountains. The descent from the Alpine pass delivers the courier into a different world. The thin, biting air of the peaks gives way to the heavy, damp atmosphere of Gaul. Before him, the vast province unfolds, a sprawling landscape of dense forests and rolling hills, all stitched together by the relentless straight line of a Roman road. This is the Via Appia, another masterpiece of imperial engineering, and it points north like an unwavering compass needle. Here, the journey settles into a brutal, hypnotic rhythm. Gallop, relay station, change horse, repeat. The landscape blurs into a monotony of green and brown, marked only by the steady beat of hooves on stone and the occasional milestone flashing past. His body operates on pure instinct, a machine of muscle and will, conditioned to eat in the saddle, drink from a water skin at a full gallop, and ignore the deep, bone-grinding ache that has become his constant companion. Every 6 to 8 miles, a mutatio provides its fleeting, 5-minute burst of order, a whirlwind of fresh horseflesh, and a gulp of water before he is flung back onto the road. But the human body is not a message. It cannot be passed from one rider to the next. After 3 or 4 of these relay changes, covering perhaps 30 hard miles, a larger complex emerges from the roadside. This is a mansio, and for the courier, it is a temporary sanctuary. More than just a larger stable, it is a government run-in, a beacon of Roman order in the Gallic wilderness. Here, he can finally dismount for more than a few moments. He can consume a hot meal of stew and bread, have his clothes brushed clean of the dust of 3 provinces, and most critically, collapse onto a simple cot for a few hours of desperately needed sleep. This is not a full night's rest, rarely more than 4 or 5 hours, but it is enough to keep the machine of his body from breaking down completely. In the dim light of a mansio's common room, surrounded by the quiet murmurs of other official travelers, he is briefly a man again, and not just an extension of the Empire's will. But the dawn always comes too soon, bringing with it the same ritual, the same saddle, and the same road stretching endlessly north, each revolution of the wheels and hooves carrying him closer to the churning gray waters of the channel. The relentless rhythm of the Gallic road finally ends at the bustling port of Caesarea. Here, the stone highway dissolves into a maze of wooden piers and the sharp, salty tang of the sea. For the first time in over 1,000 miles, the courier's speed is no longer his own. His mission now passes from the saddle to the sail. He would stride directly to the Roman naval station, presenting his diploma to the port prefect. His official dispatch would be transferred to a sleek, oar-powered Liburnian, a swift dispatch vessel of the Roman fleet. This handoff marks the most dramatic shift in our entire experiment. The predictable, mechanical pace of the relay system is about to be swallowed by the utter chaos of the Oceanus Britannicus, the English Channel. This stretch of water was the empire's most infamous bottleneck, a tempestuous barrier where all of Rome's engineering might and administrative genius counted for nothing against the raw power of nature. The speed of the message was now entirely in the hands of the winds and the tides. A perfectly calm sea with a favorable wind could see the Liburnian sail filled, its oars dipping in unison, making the crossing to the British coast in a single long day. But such ideal conditions were a rarity. More often, the channel was a churning gray expanse of whitecaps and squalls. A sudden storm could force the ship to turn back to port or simply wait at anchor for days, even weeks, while the vital message sat useless in a waterproof pouch, its urgency mocked by the gale. This was the ultimate wild card, a variable so unpredictable that it could single-handedly double the total travel time of the entire journey. The fate of an empire could hinge on a favorable breeze. The Liburnian's hull finally scrapes onto the shingle beach of Rutupii. The courier, his sea legs unsteady, stumbles onto the soil of Britannia. The channel crossing, whether a swift day or a storm-tossed week, is now a memory. His mission is not over. He is handed a fresh, rested horse, and without a moment's delay, he is moving again, his eyes fixed on the road that stretches northwest from the port. This is Watling Street, the backbone of Roman Britain, a straight, gravel-surfaced artery leading directly to his final destination. The landscape of Kent unfolds around him, a patchwork of dense woodland and newly established Roman farms, but he sees none of it. His world has narrowed once more to the road ahead. The relay stations here are farther apart, the infrastructure sparser than in Gaul, but the system holds. At each mutatio, the familiar, hurried exchange takes place, the imperial diploma granting him passage and a new mount. The miles fall away, each one bringing him closer to the end of his epic run. The gentle hills give way to flatter, marshier ground, and then, a sight that must have made his heart pound with a final burst of adrenaline. There ahead is the wide, gray ribbon of the River Thames, and on its northern bank, a sprawl of buildings protected by a timber and earth wall. Londinium, the provincial capital, the edge of the known world, he urges his tired horse into one last, determined canter, the dust of Watling Street rising around him. The gates of the city grow larger, the sounds of a bustling trade hub reaching his ears. His body is a tapestry of exhaustion, but his hand instinctively checks the leather message pouch one last time. The seal is still intact. The words from Rome have survived the Alps, the plains of Gaul, the treacherous sea, and the long roads of Britannia. He has done it. The message has arrived. The final tally of days begins now, a meticulous reconstruction of this ancient race against time. We start with the long sprint through Italy, a stretch of over 450 miles. At the courier's blistering pace of 75 miles per day, that first leg alone consumes 6 full days of hard riding. Then come the Alps, the great disruptor. This single mountain barrier could easily demand another 2, perhaps even 3 days, as the courier navigates treacherous paths and battles unpredictable weather. Once he descends into Gaul, the longest portion of the journey unfolds, a trek of nearly 500 miles along the Via Appia. Here, the relentless relay system reasserts its power, allowing him to cover another 70 miles each day, adding 7 more days to the ever-growing tally. Then, the wild card, the English Channel crossing, was the single greatest variable. A perfect run with favorable winds might see the naval Liburnian deliver him to Britannia in just 1 day, but a more realistic estimate, accounting for the frequent delays of waiting for a weather window and the crossing itself, is 2 or 3. Finally, the last push from the coast to Londinium along Watling Street, a distance of roughly 70 miles, would take our weary messenger one final, determined day. Add it all up, 6 days for Italy, 2 for the Alps, 7 for Gaul, 2 for the Channel, and 1 for Britain. The grand total is a staggering 18 days. Yet under optimal conditions, with no major alpine storms and a miraculously calm sea, a truly urgent dispatch pushed by a succession of fresh riders could shave that down even further. The evidence suggests a journey from the heart of Rome to the edge of the world could be completed in an astonishing 10 to 15 days. Let that number sink in. A message could travel over 1,200 miles of rugged, pre-industrial landscape in little more than 2 weeks. This was not just fast, it was a logistical miracle, a velocity so far beyond the experience of ordinary people that it must have seemed like magic. The absolute power of Rome made manifest in the dust rising from a lone rider on a distant road. 18 days from Rome to London seems impossibly slow to our modern minds, but let us reset our expectations entirely. For the average person in the ancient world, this journey was not a matter of weeks, but of months. A civilian traveler on foot, laden with supplies, would have been fortunate to cover 20 miles in a day. At that plodding pace, the trek would have consumed over 2 months of their life, assuming they survived the bandits, the harsh weather, and the simple lack of reliable food and shelter along the way. A merchant hauling goods in a heavy, ox-drawn cart would have faced an even more grueling timeline, likely needing a full 3 months to complete the same distance. The imperial courier was not just fast, he was operating in an entirely different dimension of time and space. Compare this to the postal systems that emerged centuries later. In the early 19th century, before the railway, the fastest mail coach in England could manage about 120 miles in a day over good roads, but that was a localized system. A cross-continental journey of over 1,000 miles, with all its varied terrain and political borders, would still have taken weeks. The Roman system, built 2,000 years earlier, was a masterpiece of integrated logistics that would not be consistently surpassed in Europe until the age of the steam train. Now, let us bring this comparison into the present. A modern car, racing down highways at 70 miles per hour for 8 hours a day, could cover the distance in just 3 days of driving. A high-speed train could do it in less than a single day, and an airplane, it makes the journey almost laughably fast, covering the ground in just a few hours. Our technology has compressed time and space to an incredible degree, but that is precisely what makes the Roman achievement so profound. They accomplished their speed without any of our advantages, without combustion engines, paved interstate systems, or global positioning satellites. Their high-speed network was built on muscle, stone, and flawless organization. It was a system where human and animal endurance were pushed to their absolute limits, all to achieve a velocity that must have felt like teleportation to the ancient world. The true marvel is not that we are faster today, but that they were so astonishingly fast then, binding their vast empire together with little more than the pounding of hooves on a road that always led forward. This speed was the invisible glue holding the entire empire together. An emperor ruling from Rome was not governing a single, cohesive territory, but a sprawling collection of distant provinces, each with its own ambitions and potential for revolt. Without the Cursus Publicus, a governor in Britannia was effectively on his own, making decisions in a vacuum that could take months to be questioned or approved. But with this high-speed network, the emperor's will could be enforced with startling immediacy. A report of unrest along the Rhine frontier, rushed to Rome by a veredarii, could be met with a countermanding order within weeks, directing legions to march and reinforcing loyalty with the sheer, undeniable presence of central authority. This system turned the vast geography of the empire from a liability into a manageable asset. It allowed for a centralized command and control that was simply impossible for any rival power. A local chieftain planning a rebellion had to contend with the terrifying possibility that news of his plot would reach the emperor almost as quickly as he could muster his own warriors, and that the response, in the form of disciplined professional soldiers, would already be on the road. The postal system was Rome's central nervous system, and every message racing along its roads was a vital impulse, allowing the brain to sense a threat in a far-off finger and command a fist to clench in response. Think of the military coordination this enabled. A legion stationed in Syria could be put on alert based on intelligence gathered from a spy in Germania. Tax revenues collected in wealthy Egypt could be rerouted to fund a new campaign on the Danube. The movements of armies separated by thousands of miles could be synchronized, creating a strategic web that no decentralized enemy could hope to match. This was not about the convenience of sending letters. It was about the raw exercise of power, the ability to project authority over such immense distances, to make a decision in a marble palace and have it alter the course of events on a rain-swept British frontier a few weeks later, was the ultimate expression of Roman imperial might. The Cursus Publicus was the engine that made the idea of a single, unified empire a reality, transforming a collection of conquered lands into a single, responsive organism. Without it, the Roman Empire would have fractured under its own weight, splintering into a dozen warring states. The true message delivered by every panting courier was not just the words on the wax tablet, but a simple, undeniable fact. Rome is watching, Rome is listening, Rome is still in command. For all its engineering genius, this imperial machine was terrifyingly fragile. A single broken link could snap the entire chain. Picture a courier arriving at a remote mutatio in the Gallic Highlands, only to find its stables empty, a local outbreak of disease, a supply wagon ambushed by bandits, or simple bureaucratic incompetence could leave the station without a single fresh horse. The courier is now stranded. His own mount is lathered and exhausted, incapable of continuing at the required pace. The entire relay system, which moments before was a marvel of speed, grinds to a halt right here. He has no choice but to wait, perhaps for days, while a new horse is procured from a nearby town or military outpost. Every hour of that delay is an eternity for the urgent message sitting in his pouch, its purpose slowly rotting away with the setting sun. Even with fresh horses, the animals themselves were a constant vulnerability. A mount could throw a shoe on a rocky descent, laming itself instantly. Another might stumble in a pothole, snapping a leg and sending the courier crashing to the hard stone of the road. In an age without veterinary medicine as we know it, a simple colic or a contagious cough could sweep through a station, wiping out its entire roster of available animals. The entire system, for all its grand design, rested on the fragile health of thousands of individual beasts. Their well-being was the concern of dedicated grooms, but nature and accident were forces even the Roman state could not fully control. Then, there were the human predators lying in wait. While major roads were patrolled, vast stretches of woodland and mountainous passes offered perfect ambush points for bandits. A lone courier, even if he was a trained soldier, was a tempting target. He carried an official diploma, a valuable item in its own right, and his message pouch might contain intelligence worth a fortune to the empire's enemies. An attack was more than just a robbery. It was a direct strike against the empire's central nervous system. A successful ambush meant not just a dead messenger, but a vital piece of information vanishing without a trace, leaving Rome blind to a crisis festering in a distant province. Ultimately, the system's greatest weakness was the empire itself. During times of political turmoil, like the year of the 4 emperors or the crisis of the 3rd century, the entire Cursus Publicus could fracture. Rival claimants to the throne would seize control of the relay stations in the regions they controlled, deliberately disrupting the flow of information to their enemies. A message from a loyalist governor might be confiscated, its courier imprisoned or worse. In these moments, the network that usually unified the empire became a tool for its division, its broken lines of communication both a symptom and a cause of the chaos. The smooth, mechanical rhythm of the relay was a luxury of a stable, powerful state. When that state began to crumble, the pounding hooves fell silent, and the distant provinces were cast adrift, waiting for a message that would never come. History remembers the names of emperors, but the true agents of change were often the unnamed riders who carried their words. Julius Caesar understood the power of speed better than any of his contemporaries. It was said he could cover 100 miles in a single day, not on a swift horse, but in a bouncing, rugged carriage, pushing his own body to the absolute limit to outmaneuver his enemies and control the flow of information. His famous comment, I "I saw, I conquered," was only possible because he moved faster than anyone thought possible, his personal use of the relay system setting a terrifying new standard for urgency. Decades later, another kind of urgent message would have raced along these same roads. When Mount Vesuvius unleashed its cataclysm in 79, the first frantic reports from the Bay of Naples would have been rushed to the Emperor Titus in Rome. A veredarius, smelling of ash and panic, would have changed horses again and again, carrying word of entire cities buried and a province in chaos. We can calculate that this desperate news likely reached the capital in just under 2 days, a blistering pace that underscored how vital this network was for crisis management. But perhaps the most critical message of all was the one announcing the death of an emperor himself. The stability of the entire empire hinged on the swift and secure transfer of this information. Upon the death of an emperor, a carefully prepared dispatch would be sent to every major legionary commander and provincial governor. Its speed was a deliberate weapon designed to ensure the chosen successor was proclaimed before rival factions could form. A delay of even a week could mean civil war. These were not mere letters. They were the vital signs of the empire, pulses of data that determined the fate of millions, all flowing along those stone highways on the backs of exhausted men and horses. The true power of the Cursus Publicus was not in its daily function, but in these moments of extreme pressure, when history itself seemed to hang on the stamina of a single rider and the next fresh horse waiting in the dark. This relentless speed came at a staggering price. Maintaining the empire's high-speed nervous system was a monumental financial drain, a constant hemorrhage of resources that was shouldered not by the central treasury alone, but by the very provinces it was built to control. The lifeblood of the Cursus Publicus was a sophisticated and often burdensome system of taxation in kind known as the veredarii. This was not a simple tax paid in coins, but a compulsory service that demanded the most valuable assets of the ancient world: animals, fodder, carts, and the labor to maintain it all. Imagine a small community along the Via Appia in Gaul. A decree from the provincial governor would arrive, stipulating their annual obligation. They were not being asked for money, but for 10 of their strongest mules, 20 cartloads of barley and oats, and the services of 2 grooms and a wheelwright for state duty. This was their veredarii, their mandatory contribution to the imperial machine. For that community, it meant less muscle for their own farms and a significant portion of their harvest redirected to feed the empire's horses. The system was meticulously organized, with each province and district assigned a quota based on its size and wealth, creating a vast, decentralized supply chain that stretched to every corner of the Roman world. The administrative effort to manage this was colossal. Imperial officials had to assess local capacity, dispatch requisition orders, and audit the supplies delivered to each mansio and mutatio to prevent theft or local corruption. It was a bureaucracy of speed, ensuring that at any moment, from the Syrian desert to a Welsh mountain pass, a fresh horse and a bag of feed were waiting for a courier they would never meet, all paid for by the silent, continuous tribute of the conquered. But the empire's reach did not end at its own borders. The relentless stone roads and the tireless veredarii were part of a much larger web of communication, one that stretched far beyond the legionary forts of the Rhine or the shores of Britannia. Official dispatches, carried by special diplomatic couriers, would travel along ancient trade routes into lands Rome never conquered. The most famous of these was the Silk Road, a sprawling network of caravan tracks linking the Mediterranean world to the distant, almost mythical empire of Han China. A Roman messenger bound for the Parthian court or a trading outpost in India would have followed the same efficient system to the empire's eastern frontier. From a city like Antioch, he would then pass his sealed documents to a caravan master, joining the long, slow procession of camels and merchants. His journey was no longer measured in the blistering daily sprints of the Cursus Publicus, but in the plodding, seasonal rhythms of the desert. Where a message to Londinium might take 18 days, a dispatch aimed at the Chinese capital of Luoyang could easily consume an entire year. This was communication on a geological timescale. The Roman rider, accustomed to changing horses every few hours, would now have to adapt to a world where the next reliable source of water might be a week's march away. and where the authority of his bronze diploma meant nothing to the nomadic chieftains who controlled the mountain passes. These epic journeys highlight the true scale of Roman ambition. Their postal system was not just for internal control, it was the first link in a chain that connected them to the entire known world, proving that even from the Forum in Rome, a determined emperor could attempt to speak to kingdoms on the other side of the earth. The silent stones of Godmanchester tell a story the history books can only hint at. This modern English town sits directly atop a key Roman mansio, a vital hub along the military road of Ermine Street. When archaeologists carefully peel back the layers of soil, the ghostly outline of the complex emerges, a blueprint of imperial efficiency. The foundation stones trace a large, rectangular courtyard, flanked by long, narrow buildings that can only be the stables. You can almost hear the echo of snorting horses and the hurried footsteps of grooms in that excavated space. The evidence of their daily labor is everywhere, in the heavy iron bits and bridle fittings, in the worn cobbles where countless hooves stood, and in the distinctive pottery shards from amphorae that once held olive oil and wine, supplies for the couriers who rested here. But perhaps the most telling finds are the coins, small bronze sestertii dropped by soldiers or officials over centuries of use. Each coin is a tiny timestamp, a piece of data confirming that this was not just any inn, but a state-run facility operating continuously for hundreds of years. Across the empire, from the sun-baked soil of Spain to the forests of Germany, similar sites reveal the same meticulous pattern. At a mutatio in Switzerland, the excavation might be smaller, a compact cluster of buildings, but the story is identical. The artifacts are humbler, a simple cooking pot, a worn leather shoe, a single horse tooth, but they speak directly to the relentless, repetitive work that powered the entire system. These were not grand palaces or temples, but the gritty, functional engines of communication, and their rediscovery allows us to reconstruct not just the architecture, but the very rhythm of the imperial machine, the daily pulse of changeovers and short rests that gave the empire its incredible speed. The relentless pace of the imperial post was not born of chaos, but of law. Its operations were so vital that they were codified in meticulous detail, preserved for us in a massive legal document known as the Theodosian Code. Compiled in the 5th century, this codex contains entire sections devoted to the Cursus Publicus, laying out a strict set of rules that governed every horse, wagon, and rider. The central, non-negotiable principle was that this system existed for the state by the state. Private citizens were absolutely forbidden from using it. A wealthy merchant could not bribe a station master to rush a business contract, nor could a senator send a personal letter using the imperial relays. The laws were brutally clear. Anyone caught illegally using the system, or any official caught abusing their position, faced severe fines, property confiscation, or even exile. This was not a public utility, it was the circulatory system of imperial power, and its purity was protected by the full force of Roman law. We can see this system in action through the eyes of those who relied on it. The senator and author Pliny the Younger, while serving as a special imperial envoy in Bithynia, wrote frequently back to the Emperor Trajan. His letters are filled with casual references to the post, asking for official permission to use the Cursus Publicus to transport his wife, or discussing the logistics of sending reports. For Pliny, the system was simply part of the administrative landscape, a tool he used with bureaucratic familiarity. His correspondence reveals its deep integration into the daily mechanics of governance. Other chroniclers mention its use in moments of high drama, from carrying declarations of war to spreading news of an imperial accession. These were not just roads and horses, they were a legally enforced channel of command, a physical manifestation of the emperor's will that reached into every province. The system's presence in both law and literature shows us its dual nature. It was simultaneously a dry, regulated bureaucracy of requisition forms and horse inventories, and the very pulse of the empire, carrying the words that could raise up governors or condemn legions to the frontier. The legal codes that protected this system would eventually crumble, but its blueprint for speed proved immortal. As the Western Roman Empire fragmented, the organized Cursus Publicus dissolved into a memory. Yet the fundamental idea of a relay network was too powerful to disappear entirely. In the early medieval period, Charlemagne, the great Frankish king who sought to revive a unified Western Empire, established his own version of the Roman system. His missi dominicii, or envoys of the Lord, traveled across his vast domains using a network of royal posts, carrying his decrees and conducting audits. Their mission was identical to that of the Roman veredarii, to project central authority over sprawling territory. The system was cruder and less extensive, but the model was unmistakably Roman. The torch of organized communication was then carried not by kings, but by merchants and universities. In the 13th century, the Hanseatic League, a powerful confederation of merchant guilds across northern Europe, created its own sophisticated messenger service to connect its trading posts from London to Novgorod. Their couriers, carrying vital market prices and contracts, moved along established routes with guaranteed safe passage, mirroring the logistical efficiency of the imperial post. At the same time, great institutions like the University of Paris operated a Petrus, a private postal service for students and scholars, ensuring that academic knowledge and tuition money could flow reliably between distant homes and the lecture halls. These networks were fragmented and private, but they all shared the same foundational principle: a chain of trusted waypoints enabling reliable communication over impossible distances. This Roman blueprint would find its most direct descendant in the great national postal systems of the early modern era. In 15th century France, King Louis XI established the royal posts, a service of mounted couriers stationed at regular intervals along the kingdom's main roads. His motivation was the same as Emperor Augustus's: control and intelligence. He needed to know about rebellions and foreign troop movements faster than anyone else. A century later in England, the Tudor monarchs formalized the master of the posts, creating an official infrastructure that would eventually evolve into the Royal Mail. The core mechanics were a direct echo of the Cursus Publicus fresh horses at relay points and dedicated riders carrying state dispatches. The primary cargo had shifted from imperial commands to royal proclamations and tax records, but the underlying engine was the same. The real revolution came when these state systems opened their services to the public. For the first time since the fall of Rome, an ordinary person could pay a fee to send a letter across the country with a reasonable expectation of its arrival. This democratization of speed transformed society, binding nations together with a web of personal and commercial correspondence. The local post office became the heir to the Roman Mancio, a civic hub where the community connected to the wider world. Today, the ghost of the Cursus Publicus rides with us more than ever. Its DNA is embedded in the global logistics networks that define our modern world. When you track a package online and watch it move from a sorting facility in one city to a distribution center in another, you are witnessing the digital evolution of the Roman relay. The massive, automated warehouses of companies are the high-tech descendants of the mutations, where goods are not just stored but dynamically sorted and dispatched with breathtaking efficiency. The long-haul truck driver pushing through the night on an interstate highway is the modern veredarii, his cargo of consumer goods as vital to our economy as imperial tax revenues were to Rome. The fundamental principles remain unchanged: a networked infrastructure of hubs and vehicles, a relentless focus on speed and reliability, and a system so vast it seems to operate with a life of its own. The Roman Empire discovered a fundamental truth about power and connection: that control is not just about armies and laws, but about the speed of information. They built the first high-speed network for data, and in doing so, they designed a template that would shape communication for the next 2 millennia. The next time a notification tells you a package is out for delivery, remember the courier on the Via Appia, the groom waiting with the fresh horse, and the simple, revolutionary idea that to hold a world together, you must first find a way to make it smaller. So the final calculation is complete. A message could travel from the heart of Rome to the distant shores of Londinium in as little as 10 to 15 days. This was not a miracle of magic, but a miracle of logistics. The true secret of Roman power was not just in its legions, but in this invisible network of stone and speed. The Cursus Publicus was the empire's ultimate weapon, a system that allowed a single will to command a continent. It solved the fundamental mystery of how to govern a vast, diverse collection of lands, transforming them into a single, responsive organism. The next time you hear about the glory of Rome, remember that its true strength was measured not only in gold or steel, but in the relentless, pounding rhythm of a courier's horse, carrying an empire's command on a road that never seemed to end. We have solved one ancient mystery, but so many more await. Which historical puzzle should we investigate next? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest secret.